Why don't we get started? I'd like to call the March 12th meeting of the Norfolk Advisory Committee to order. First order of business is a roll call. Jonathan Hurwitz here, and Fitzgerald
Here.
Joyce Terrio
Here.
Rob Garrity
Present.
Mike G
Here.
Kevin Calcutt here, David Luke's here. We do expect another member. Add her to the rolls when she arrives. I'd like to take Article 16, which is one of the CPC articles first. It's the one regarding the cleanup of Mirror Lake, or the phase 2. There she is. I guess, are you here?
I'm here.
Phase 2 of Mirror Lake. There is a presentation that I did email around earlier. I don't know if you're planning on showing that or.
I can, it's the one that we did with CPC earlier.
You want to, is it, how long are you supposed to take?
4 slides.
Okay. Can you pop that up, Erica? That's. You can pull another chair up, gentlemen.
It's 2.
Oh, there is 2, okay. Good. Yourselves.
Yes, my name is Doug Surratt. I live at 459 Spear Street. I am the chair of the Friends of Mirror Lake Lake Treatment Committee.
Tom Souza, 43 Mirror Lake Ave, co-chair of Friends of Mirror Lake.
Great. And online we have. Oh,
Uh-oh.
no, that's fine.
Yeah, you have Carl Nielsen from TRC.
Great. This has been before us a couple times. We've had some questions, and we also were waiting for Rentham to take action.
We're going to try and address it.
Okay. Why don't I turn it over to you, gentlemen?
So, for those who haven't heard the presentation before, basically, what we're talking about is 65-acre lake. It's 85% Rentham, 15% Norfolk. All the public beach areas, which you see in the pictures here, are actually owned by Norfolk, including the dam and the causeway over there. Why we're requesting CPC funds when you're already providing waste treatment CPC funds? The answer is that the lake's immediate future is in doubt, and we're trying to figure out an appropriate solution. When I click the bullets should come up. There we go. So for those who aren't familiar with the lake, it's only about 4 to 6 feet deep at this point. Suffers from severe eutrophication, which is basically just says that the organic matter is built up in the lake bed, and the lake becomes shallower every year. Every year the lake gets worse and worse, and other Massachusetts lakes all around the area suffer from the similar fate. The best example we can give you is just look at Turnpike Lake on the one in Plainville, if you've ever been down that way. I actually grew up in Attleboro right near there, used to swim and fish there. 20 years ago, you could actually do that. Today, you can practically walk across the lake. That's a perfect example of what can happen with Mirror Lake in the next 20 years. So if we don't take actions at some point here to try and reverse what's going on with the lake, unfortunately, it'll become something similar to that, which is basically a wetland swamp.
Would you look forward to paint the whole slide if you would?
Yeah, thanks. And unlike in Rentham, where we have Lake Pearl, Lake Archer, which are large cattle ponds, if you don't know the history, the lake was created about 100 years ago via a dam on the Norfolk side, and in fact, ever since then, the town of Norfolk has been maintaining and supporting that dam. And in fact, if the dam were to ever fall apart, about 100 homes would be affected in Norfolk. Prior to 2017, the lake wasn't really being looked at or addressed, and we discovered that there was an unmanaged buildup of organic matter. And additionally, a study done by in 2022 by TRC, who's on the call today, showed that 4 Rentham storm drains were actually dumped and unfiltered water into the lake and extremely high phosphorus levels, which was feeding explosive wheat. In 2022, we, Friends of Mirror Lake, contracted Carl Nelson from TRC with the funding from Rentham to do what's called a limited phase 1 lake bottom sediment analysis. And this involved taking a very limited number of core samples and analyzing them to determine if the core bottom of the lake was polluted in any way, and also to determine what the actual lake bottom was. The analysis, which we provided in the past to both Rentham and Norfolk, showed that the lake is actually really deep. It showed that there were 15 to 20 feet of soft sediment in some areas before hitting hard lake bottom, meaning that the lake is actually 25 to 30 feet deep in some areas. The TRC report also suggested that the lake could be a very strong candidate for dredging, but according to state and federal law, detailed lake-wide phase 2 analysis is required in order to determine if that's a possibility. Both the federal EPA and Mass DEP both require phase 2 study before any remediation, dredging, or otherwise can be done on any lake, and also before any funding can be appropriated for any remediation. So our goal is not going forward, not to use local funds to handle this, but rather federal and state funds that are available for this sort of thing. But we cannot even request or attempt to request it without phase 2 analysis, because that's required by law. Next slide.
What would you do? Thank you.
So we're requesting CPC funds to do what's called a dredging feasibility study and remediation plan. And Paul here from TRC put together the plan, and we'll be happy to answer questions on that. That's all we're asking for funding at this point. So without a long-term solution, we can only treat the weeds. And both times I said to us, hey, what's the long-term game plan? And the long-term game plan is we just treat the weeds. Unfortunately, when we treat them, they die, they go to the bottom gets thicker, the lake gets shallower, and eventually it just goes to nothing. So as we said, 85% of the lake is in Rentham, which also owns 100 to 200 feet of lakefront and 2 islands. 15% of the lake is in Norfolk, including the free public beach, which by the way is one of the few free public beach and boat launch areas in the entire part of the state that was called. You also own the dam, the dike, the boat launch area. You actually maintain that on an annual basis. In fact, we work with DPW on an annual basis to do that. In 2024, TRC, Carl quoted the cost to conduct the phase 2 analysis and remediation plan, which meets all the state and federal guidelines. The entire lake at $243,000. In 2023 and 2024, we presented to both Rentham Concom and to Norfolk Concom. At Rentham, we requested 85% funding. In 2023, they deferred, but in November of this past year, at town meeting, funding was approved for the full 85%, which is a little over $200,000 of the $243,000 that's part of the quote. And it's important to note that the funds must be used in 2025, 2026, if not, the funds will revert back. So we have a very limited window. We also met with Norfolk, CPC and Concom and yourselves in the last couple of years. As you all know, you did defer it last year. There were questions which I think we had answers to this year. And in addition, obviously, the second phase of it was that you had questions about why you would want to approve it. Rentham hadn't approved it, and now Rentham has approved it. So we invited Carl to join today. He actually participated in the same Q&A with CDC a couple of months ago, which Caitlin was at, and we thought that that meeting went pretty well. So now we're hoping that.
Hold on a second. Caitlin is Caitlin Nover, who's our conservation agent.
Yes, and it's important to know for those who don't know, last year, Caitlin had some questions and issues with the plan a year ago, which I think Carl and everyone was able to resolve. So our goal is now that we think we've resolved the questions that she had, as well as we got Rentham from hopefully we will approve and we'll move forward. Next slide, please. Last slide. Okay, so really simple, we have 4 goals. Fund and conduct a phase 2 analysis to determine what choices we have in the lake other than killing weeds and watching the lake go. To engage with both towns to abstain, not abstain, to obtain state and federal funding for the recommended solution. So basically, so we have the answer of what we can do, we can go to anybody and ask for funding. Obviously, our goal number 3 is to save your lake from dying. The form of the recommendations that come from this study. And also equally important, because we know that any remediation is going to be very expensive. Avoid going to the towns for that remediation, basically minimize future funding by using funding examples below. The 2 examples below are exact examples of what we can do. Number 1 on the far right is the Massachusetts MVP program, which was just introduced this past year. It allows any municipality in the state of Massachusetts to request funding for inland dredging, of which this lake would qualify. Now, interestingly enough, you can't request funding for dredging for this program from the state without the phase 2 analysis, because people are going to say, have you proved that the lake is safe to dredge? So it's kind of a chicken or egg thing, but that's where we're at. So that was a brand new program, just came out last year. A number of municipalities in the state have already applied for that because they've already done all their pre-work and their homework, and we would like to do the same. Second one is on the left. This is from our federal representative, Jay Hoffman-Foss's office. We've already met with them twice. You may not know that he covers from all the way up in Newton, all the way down to almost the Rhode Island border. This is an example of funding he just got this past year. It's called the 10-mile river dredging project, and it's for $1.5 million. I actually grew up in Attleboro, so I know this quite well. The river floods and it's all full of silt, and you're trying to dredge the entire river. It actually goes through, very important to this discussion here tonight. It goes through the towns of Attleboro, North Attleboro, and Plainville. That was sponsored by the town of North Attleboro. Why do I bring that up? Because it's an example of a water body that crosses multiple municipalities where they were working together to work with our federal representatives to come up with money. So that's our goal. Some people said, oh, you know, what's this got to do with dredging? It actually this funding has nothing to do with actually dredging or doing anything other than removing some very minimal samples from the bottom of the lake and doing this super analysis and coming up with a plan as to what can be done for the lake. Everything else down the road, whether it's some other form of remediation or not, is TBD, because we can't do anything until we do this. So that's our story in a nutshell. And Paul's obviously on hand to address the technical aspects of what that means and anything you want to know about.
So, as I mentioned, and you know this, yeah, we've discussed this a couple times in front of the committee. And I do think much of my primary concern was phase 2 sampling could allow for the project to move forward. But if you begin dredging and you have to sample the dredge spoils as they come up, what happens if you discover a significant hotspot that got missed during the sampling? There's a comment in your FAQ about you don't have to clean up sediment that's contaminated, but once it's out of the lake, i.e. dredging, it's not sediment anymore, it's spoils. So it's a question, I think, for Carl, and I'm happy you're here. I understand that the phase 2 will allow for this to go forward, but the concern I have is that we allow a project to go forward for dredging, that we then own a problem that, despite the phase 2 making us feel comfortable that we should go forward, we get stuck holding the contaminated bag, and what that might end up costing both us and Rentham. And I also, it's a interesting question. I don't know if there'd be an assignment of responsibility if it was on one side of the town line or the other side of the town line. That literally just dawned on me, but the real concern I've always had is what happens with contaminated dredge spoil? Should it be dredged? Recognizing that this phase two may not create any of those issues, but it's the next step that makes me nervous. And I have another question, but go ahead if you could address that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for allowing me to join by Zoom. This is saves me a bit of a drive, so I appreciate it. The way the dredging phase two works is the very first step we're going to do after we work with the towns to figure out what areas they're interested in dredging and how deep they would like to go, is we design a sediment sampling plan that basically collects sediment from those targeted dredge areas in a way that's consistent with the DEP regulations. And then that sampling plan is sent to DEP for their review before we actually execute the plan. So the work gets designed with the knowledge of the phase one samples that we already collected. And then we also look at the history of contamination within the watershed and potential sources within the watershed, if there are any historically. And that helps shape how many samples you have to take and how much detail needs to be collected in those samples. So if your lake is very clean, which the phase one analysis revealed, it was, we only took 3 samples, but the samples we collected were relatively clean, which means that the work going forward should streamline the number of samples we have to collect. DEP will often look for an iterative process where you go out and collect a certain number of samples, send them to a lab for results. Based on those findings, there might be a second round of sampling that would occur to further refine any contamination or areas that may be found to be contaminated. So if we found a hot spot within the lake at one site, they might have you take 2 or 3 samples around that site to isolate or potentially isolate that. And if there's something that's too hot or too contaminated where you wouldn't want to risk removing it from the pond, they would recommend you leave it. And so that's what ends up happening, is you would dredge around it or exclude that area from the dredge program. Or the alternative would be to collect it, remove it, and have it properly disposed, which, as you had mentioned, can be costly, although we've done projects where that's exactly the case. We take the contaminated to a that can handle that material. So there's a lot of workarounds, but without the data and under that process, you don't have that. But they wouldn't really give you a permit with it. Could be potentially contaminated because they don't want to create an upland contaminated site. That's the Pro 1 water quality certification program at DEP.
The sort of 2 parts of the follow-up is what happens to the dredge spoils if they come out non-contaminated? Where are they
We like to
taken?
call them reuse material. So as opposed to spoils.
So I'm still calling.
So if they're clean, the material can actually be used in a number. And it depends on the volume of material you ultimately end up taking out, how quickly it dewaters, and then what potential uses you have. So in some instances, we've done dredging in municipalities where they just want to spread the material out on an empty field that they have, let it dry, and basically seed it afterwards. And then it basically sort of works into the landscape that way. Others have wanted to just pile it up. We had a project in West Brookfield, Mass, where they had a landfill that was closed, and they found an area within that property that we could just bring it to. And we had dump trucks full of material being placed in that location, and again, seeded and planted and it blends in with the landscape and you really don't see it at the end of the day. So that's sort of option one, is a place where you just sort of blend it into the landscape. Option two is the material has value, and you can, depending on the amount of construction in the vicinity of the work, you know, if it's too far away, people aren't going to truck it. But we've found projects where the project proponent found a local gravel and Aggregate Industries. I don't know if you're familiar with them. They do a number of construction supply for roadways throughout the state, and they needed material for top dressing of roadways that they've widened and reconstructed. And so there's a demand for a large volume of organically rich material. They mixed it with sand and made topsoil out of it. So it had value to them, and they, as a result, trucked it away from the project for free. There was no charge. So that saved a considerable amount on the budget for the project.
And
so that's the way you use it, is mainly big projects like that, highway, or, you know, large, if there was a large residential development or subdivision being created and they needed a lot of topsoil, it would have value to them as a way to landscape after they've done their construction.
The other question is, what happens if you dredge something that needs to be disposed of because it's contaminated? And I guess it depends on the level of contamination and what type of contamination. Hold on.
Yeah, the goal is really to avoid that, just to avoid the complications related to that, because you can't sell the material, you can't give it away in that state. One of the things that they do to prevent that is, as you're dredging, the 401 water quality cert will require you to stockpile the material. And typically we put it on a liner, a plastic liner, and they allow you to put up to 1,000 cubic yards in a big pile. And every 1,000 cubic yards, you send a sample to a laboratory for testing. And that would be required. What you test, what chemicals, etc., would be required as part of the 401 water quality permit that gets issued. So if your soil is found to be very clean throughout the testing that we do, they wouldn't require any testing of that pile, or they might require what's called a paint filter test, so that there's just not a lot of liquid in the material that's being piled. But that's the nature of the work. It basically gets tested before you're allowed to move it, dispose of it, or place it somewhere else. So it's a two-step process. One, you test within the pond, and two, you test once you're doing the dredging project itself before it gets placed anywhere or sent off site.
Thank you. I have one more, but Rob, you have.
I think if I was the moderator, I would call any questions beyond the scope. Because we're not talking about dredging here. We're talking about the first step in what is going to be a $1 trillion project.
The moderator's not here, but the chair here, what you're saying.
We're 25 minutes in.
We understand it, Rob. We've had this conversation a couple times.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about dredging again.
All right, fine. I do have a question. Joyce has a question, but I have a question. The MVP program is offered by the Executive Office of Economic Development. What's your slides? Okay. Curious, but go ahead, Joyce.
Thank you. I could have a couple of follow-up questions. Just letting you know, because it's so hypothetically, we're talking about the first phase, the phase of doing the sampling. So hypothetically, you've got money from Random, let's say this board moves forward and we recommend the funds be spent out of CPC for this. So I think my first question is, based on 2 towns being involved in the sampling, who's the project manager of this project? Who manages the sampling?
I can't answer that specifically, but ultimately it's whoever signs my contract is who I'll be the one working directly with, and whether there's an or a crosstown panel set up or a working group set up, that would be fine with me.
In the phase one, just to answer the question, it was me. And I was directly involved with Lake Manager in Rentham.
Okay,
They have a person that's assigned to be involved in this thing. And obviously, similar to what we're doing right now with the lake treatment on the weed side, I'm involved with both towns. But going forward, it actually will be very important that both towns have a point person.
Frank, the intermunicipal agreement between the two select boards.
oh, okay.
Can I,
Good.
Cindy has a. Oh, okay, all right.
Alright, so if I. may,
Yep.
second, going to the second part of this. So we go in, we do our sampling. You take a few core samples, and as you said, it's just from different places. Let's say one or two of the areas that you sample, you're not happy with what you see. So you go in and you do the next round of sampling, you either investigate that area, go a little bit further out, or a little bit further down. Let's say that Rentham is okay with the sampling, let's say it comes back, yeah, well, it might be questionable, but it looks okay. Let's say Norfolk, who has given money for this project, let's say the Norfolk side is like, we're not happy with what's coming out of the samples, and we're not willing to move forward with that. So who makes that decision? Who gets the statistics? And where does it go to for determination as to whether one side likes the sampling figures or not, levels, I guess.
If I mean, in fact, that you won't even know that till phase after this phase, so we're going beyond this step.
But it's before the dredging decision.
Well, but this. So we won't even be, you're saying when we get the samples out, or if something's bad, we won't know that unless we do this phase. And then you make the determination going forward. So what we're looking for right now is to have the ability to test, to validate what is good and what is bad. You're talking about the next phase, which we will run to do this.
Right, this funding to the point of the gentleman over here is just to figure that out.
To start, but we
Yeah.
don't know, we don't know yet.
Yeah, James, that's kind of.
No, hold on. She's trying to get an answer.
But she's asking the question, you're not asking the question, the question is who's the grant to, because that's who controls the project, that's what you're asking. Who controls the project?
Okay,
Well, all right.
Project group.
No, it isn't.
It's
okay.
being run by
So
the
it's
city.
not-
So the municipality, yeah.
It's our money, so we're granting it to them.
Oh, ultimate judging, yes, and I know I'm not sitting next to a microphone, so you can repeat.
Chair, can I ask you a question?
I got John. Sorry,
Well, shut up.
are you all set? No. Okay, Jonathan.
I know we're 30 minutes in, but I'll be that guy. We're kind of evaluating things beyond this analysis step. I would want to really back this up and evaluate what are the risks of doing nothing. From an ecological perspective, if we let this go to wetlands and swamp, aside from the fact that we lose a swimming hole and somewhere for you to paddle your boat around, is there impact to property? Is there impact to ecological concerns? Like I understand the recreational aspects of it, but nature takes its course. Wetlands come and go, swamps come and go. Like what? Again, aside from keeping this open from a just recreational use perspective, what's the downside of letting nature take its course and doing nothing?
Yeah, I can answer that if you don't mind. Ultimately it's eutrophication, which is the aging of a lake, and that's a normal process for any lake. The challenge when you have an impounded system like this is it eutrophies faster. It ages faster than would a natural water body. As a result, it fills in faster over time because of that impoundment, not letting sediment move away from the pond over time. And that eutrophication is exacerbated by people living in the watershed and around the lake, obviously, but it also is a natural process. And the aquatic life that live in the pond currently, or the lake currently, are impacted with lower dissolved oxygen levels, excessive nutrients from decaying organic material. And that process is generally something that we strive to prevent or reduce as part of water quality. You know, Mass DEP has water quality regs with guidance for the amount of oxygen that should be in an aquatic system. If it gets low, you know, you have that choice of letting it go become a wetland, which is an entirely different ecosystem than an open water body. So the fish that are there now won't be there. It'll be a different type of fish or no fish at all as it becomes more of a wetland. And that's a choice for the community to make. I know that most impounded systems are man-made, and the goal isn't to let the natural process occur once someone's put the time and effort to create a system like this. It's a beautiful lake, and it's a beautiful water body, and I've kayaked on it before, and it's a great place to be. And it would be nice to keep it that way. And that's, I think, from an ecological perspective, it's nice as well. And timelines for this, you know, it's only going to progressively get worse and accelerate over time. So in 5 years, it'll be more mud and more difficult to do the project than it will if you tackle it now. And in 15 or 20 years, you'll start to lose parts of the pond. The southern end of the pond will become what you're saying is a wetland. And that it becomes harder to reclaim as well. Once it's a wetland, there's different levels of protection from the Wetland Protection Act. Maintaining an open water body with dredging is something that you can achieve and do through the permits currently. You can't really dredge out a wetland, you know, an emergent wetland. They're somewhat more protected. So it becomes harder to do if you let it slide too far down the line.
In summation, is it fair to say the primary driver behind this effort is to preserve this as a recreational space?
Certainly, that was one of the drivers. I will add, though, that there was a significant discussion in our meetings in Rentham about the economic impact of the property around the lake on both sides. So that was brought up as a concern that, to Carl's point, once it gets to a certain point of degradation, it's almost impossible to recover. And so there was a concern with what that would do to impact just the people in the real estate around the lake.
So just from a property value perspective.
Yes, for sure.
Can I ask a question?
No, okay.
But just, I mean, I don't want to get a turn, but it is on this actual topic. So would there be a period where it's actually a nuisance? I mean, over a period of decades, as the things die and the lake fills in, would you describe it that way versus an asset? Or is it just?
Yeah, certainly once the lake becomes shallow to the point, and you're seeing it already happening, it's getting shallow, and the weeds that are growing encroach on the open water habitat more and more each year over time, because the water's shallower, the sun gets to the bottom in more locations, and so you're seeing that happen, and that encourages algae growth on the bottom. That algae floats up off the sediment. It gets its nutrients from the sediment. When the sun hits it, it grows and it floats to the surface. So you get more algae scums and floating algal mats over time. And so that's those, when they decay, become smelly. And so they're an aesthetic problem, both, you know, and an odor problem ultimately. And that affects property values for sure.
Thank you. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so if there is sediment that is found to be contaminated or areas that are contaminated, are there funds available to remediate that through the state, or, you know, what does that look like? And also long-term, you know, what are the federal and state funds that are available for this type of project? How much are we talking here?
Yeah, Doug went through a couple of options. One is directly appealing to your state representatives to secure funding. And that's actually one of the better ways. It's a reliable way if you have those relationships and connections, and you can having two towns involved certainly helps you leverage that money. Rather than one person's one squeaky wheel, there's two that can be satisfied with one pot of money. And then secondarily, there are funding options from the state and the federal that come available. This recent grant that was made available in Massachusetts for inland dredging has historically been for marine dredging. And what happened was over time, a lot of the projects are all going to marine and coastal communities, and the inland community said, hey, we're paying taxes in the state as well, and we'd like to see some of that as well. And likewise, there was money that came out through the American Recovery, ARPA money that was made available as part of the recovery from COVID. And there was money made available at a number of times that people have been able to tap. When it comes available, if you have a plan in place, those shovel-ready projects tend to float right to the top of the funding list. And so you don't really know when those will come available and how to predict, but you do know how to position yourself for that. And the way to do that is have something, a plan in place that can be on the radar of your state reps and quickly go up the chain so that it can get that type of funding in place.
So, just talk to.
No, hold on.
Can't answer her question. It's specific to her question.
Go ahead.
Can you just talk about the fact that it's not necessary that we dredge the whole lake, and that depending on the amount of cubic feet of material that get removed, the cost can be related to that?
Yes, yeah, we can tailor the scale and scope of the project to focus on the highest priority areas, and then if more money becomes available, go into those secondary priority areas. And there will likely be areas that we just will not dredge or touch, either due to funding constraints or just it's not needed. They're deep enough or they're not likely to require dredging. So there's the shaping of the project and how it's going to look and how much funding ultimately will be required is something that we'll work with the folks in both towns to come up with a plan that everyone agrees is the right plan. And that's what we'll then use to design it and move it forward through the permitting and ultimately funding process.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Okay, we're all set, Cameron?
So that's all good questions. They're more Cindy kind of questions.
Okay. Cindy, why you say it? Yeah.
I also want to point out, just for clarification, Paul has no future interest in dredging at all. His company doesn't now.
Mike.
So
Thank you.
he has no interest in how this gets resolved in the future. His company would not be doing that work.
Okay.
They just are an expert on what needs to be done to prepare for the book.
Thank you.
So where did the rent the money?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it
I'm
was
sorry.
CPA.
Was it?
No, CPA.
Oh, see,
We actually forwarded a letter to Norfolk CPC from Rentham, and the funds are actually available right now. So that can be conducted anytime. As I said, their only restriction was that we discussed with them that we were working with you guys as well. And they just said, well, you have to get this done between now and next year. So we have a limited.
We mirrored that time frame.
Okay, and where in the statute is this? And so we don't own this, we didn't buy it with CPA funds. Right,
It's open space preservation.
it's open space preservation, but it's.
Restoration.
Restoration, but I thought the statute said you couldn't spend money on restoration, things you didn't buy with CPA money.
No,
No,
It originally said that?
no,
it's recreation. was originally that. You can do it on open
Can't do-
space.
Okay.
They opened it up on the recreation
Yeah.
side. So it's always needs of open space.
Granted, there's statutory protections of the union, but are there CRs? Will there be CRs? I mean, it's CPA money, so don't check the CR the thing too.
I think only if you acquire. I'd have to look into that. I don't know that legal answer.
I mean, it does become a field eventually,
Yeah.
If you want to see it.
Right.
Conservation restriction for those who aren't in.
Yeah.
phase.
So this is phase two.
Yes,
So there was a phase one.
Yes.
How was that paid for? You guys paid for that out of yourself?
Yeah, so what happened was, I talked about it in the slide, a couple of years back, Carl Steen. We knew there was an issue because they had done analysis on the lake on the Rentham side before. We were able to get a limited amount of to do a phase one. And the phase one, Carl can describe it better than I can, but it's basically a very limited number of holes being poked in the bottom, taking samples.
Yeah.
Only on the Rentham side, by the way. And it was simply to say, do we even have the ability to go to a phase two? Because if phase one showed that there's toxic waste there, then we're done.
I'm vaguely remembering conversations about phase one last time.
Yeah.
So. And the thing that I remember from last year too is. So how was that procured? Was that bid?
No,
no,
So,
Friends in their lake.
no, it was in Rentham.
so but we're talking about different monies. We're talking about our money, public money. Is it gonna be?
No, it was CBC funds and.
That. Yeah, so did you bid it?
No, what about the phase one, I think he means.
No.
they would have been for different engineering firms?
Theoretically.
Phase one was, it was just, I think, $10,000 or $12,000. It was a very low number.
Yeah.
This is RFP and the whole shoot.
This is like, it's above, I assume we're not paying more than rent here, right?
Oh, no.
So it's above all the thresholds for 3 writtens, I think.
Did you, hopefully I'm remembering it right, that you told me that you could do the phase two because you were already involved in the phase one?
No, you can't expand a contract that significantly.
Yeah, that would be, I don't know.
Okay,
I think the slide,
I can tell you, Rentham side, there's no request for.
So,
all volunteers. How do you forget things?
we've gotten emails from Rich McCarthy and Caitlin about this, and they said the project management aspects of the things that. The going forward with phase two is. There's some questions, but nothing big, but it's mostly on the project management side, which I think is including how it.
coordination.
How it's prepared.
Yeah.
The coordination between the two, so you've raised a good question. But I will ask that.
That's one last question. It's actually a question. So you say the lake bottom is 25 to 30 feet down
In the middle, yeah.
in the middle. Was the lake originally 25 to 30 feet, or was that just where you get to really tough stuff?
No, the original lake bottom, I'm really the historian of the lake. So when they dredged, when they built a lake, the whole dike and the dam, which are also going to funding for the next time meeting as well. So they took the middle of the lake and created the entire western shore, all the way from Shear Street down to Forest Grove Ave. So that was all pushed up, so it was really 25-30 feet deep, and now it's just being filled in. So in water today, if your water was 5 to 6 feet, I can walk across the lake today.
Yeah.
But when they sampled, part of what Paul has to do to get to the real sampling part of the real bottom. He has to push what's called hard bottom. And what they found was in some areas that mushy bottom on top of it was 15 to 20 feet. And then on the edge of the lake, if you were to go there right now, you'd see the water's only about this deep. And he almost drowned there earlier this year because we were walking through it and it's like quicksand, he sunk in his waist. I actually have a video of it.
Does anyone else have any questions?
Assuming, let's assume things don't go favorably for you guys in Norfolk, if we were to vote no. On this, because it represents 3% of our overall. Whole money we're looking for right now, we're 1.5 million short, if we voted no.
And it's separate crunch, this is a separate bottom.
It's still
It's a separate bottom.
right. Go to the voters and say we're $1.5 million shortfall, we're dredging lakes, so people's property values take nice.
It's our.
Both same.
Yeah.
It's pot money, but it's pot money used for other products. Down the road.
A very limited number of projects with scope, right?
Point being, we're messing with ecology, we're playing science, we're gonna dig out a lake that does its natural thing, it was man-made, not by anyone in this room. By somebody 100 years ago. If we voted no, could the company still do 85% of this project in Rentham where 85% of the lake is? It's being described like it's a 50-50 venture, but it's truly not, we own the tiniest portion of it. So could you do 85% of the lake with the Rentham money, do all the tests? And if everything comes back positive and then down the road it's time to dredge. Maybe Norfolk gets back involved.
I would call into that.
Well, the company went away from $200,000 of work.
You're asking me whether I could do the design and feasibility and permitting for the Rentham side without the Norfolk money?
We're still go on, if we
Yes.
do allocate the money, the project still goes on, thank you.
Yes, we could. A big chunk of the cost is related to sediment testing and coring. So most of that is related to sediment testing and coring, and they're very expensive samples to analyze. So if we don't do any testing and planning on the Rentham or the Norfolk side, that's fine. We can make it work.
That means you could never dredge on the north side.
No, you wouldn't have the information. I couldn't get a permit to do work on the Norfolk side without having tested the sediment. there.
And we could dredge the southern part, middle and southern part of the lake, and the rest of it will remain as
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, it does put you in a different position with regard to competing for public funding and sources of money from the state or feds when you're one town applying versus two. You know, it looks better when both towns are sort of partners in a project.
Thank you. Are we all set, gentlemen and ladies? Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You, no, we're gonna go to the citizens petitions. You do have to stay. You don't have to sit there if you don't want.
But you can.
It's okay.
I'd like to take the two citizens petitions article right now, Articles 30 and 31. We have the lead petitioner here, Jack, if you'd like to join us at the table.
I don't know, that last thing, maybe you don't. I'm saucy tonight, bro.
So, thank you for coming. We like to hear from the sort of the lead, the proposed authors of these articles. And there's two that you presented. Article 30 is the article which hold on a second, I'm just making sure I got the right one. This, it would switch the, no, it would switch the appointing authority for this committee from the moderator to the select board. Please feel free to tell us what your thought process was in proposing this.
Well, my original thought process was that, if you had a, moderator who wanted to pick, or did pick, and has picked all of the members of the advisory committee, then that person could basically pick like-minded people. And the town's like be stacking it there now. However, I've thought about it some more, and I've talked to some people in town. And I think I would like to withdraw it and keep it the way it is.
You'll have to talk to the select board about that, but appreciate you letting us know.
I thought a lot about it, and I've talked to some people in town, and I don't really think it's the big issue that I originally thought about it when I drafted this months ago.
I would encourage you to reach out to Justin was here. He's since left us, but go ahead, Kevin.
No, he's on the, I was there.
Okay, thank you. So anyways, he's hopefully paying attention, but I know he's in his office working, so.
I'm listening.
He's the one with the seal. He don't have a picture. Thanks. The other, Article 31 was,
1 year.
it's the shortening the 3-year term of the moderator.
And I talked to people about it too, and that was one time, that's how it was a 1 year thing, right? And I talked to the board of selectmen like this, the select board, and I talked to other people. And I'm running for a moderator, and I just thought, if I turn out to be a jerk, you didn't have to wait 2 years. But I think it's okay with the 3 years. It would be the only one that would be 1 year. So
I think that was one of the arguments to switch it from 1 to 3, because he was the only, that was the only position that had to basically run, start running 6 months after they got.
So the same argument, this is legal.
Right, I appreciate that. And you should let us, if you're not interested in pursuing, they'll make sure.
Can you guys recommend against it?
Well, it's easier if they just, they're allowed, they haven't finalized their certificate, a select board. This is essentially, and I'll get the terminology, it's open in the sense that they sign off in the final warrant. No, this is still drafting.
Okay.
They can, and other things will be modified based on input and things like that, so you should talk to them and they'll just come off and they won't here. Am I being accurate there, gentlemen?
Yes, that's what it's. Yes.
Should I wait until the next select board meeting or just start?
I think you could probably just make a phone call. I don't think you have to show up. Yeah, okay, yeah,
Just give them a phone call.
yeah, thank you. If I had known it was gonna be that short, I would have let you go.
It's okay.
They won't pay for that guy, so I wanted to make sure. Exactly. This is the 3rd year.
We said, thinking if I'm elected, I can get rid of this guy.
You probably see, we're all not going to report. Everyone is different, only different report. Yeah, it's like.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time and thanks for being patient.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack. Okay, so we're back to the CPC articles. Thank you for your patience, folks. I'm trying to get us back to the beginning of those. I think it's Article 17 will be next.
Well, the first one, I think it's 14, isn't it? The annual contributions.
Okay, well, all right. Cindy, can you speak to Articles 14 and 15? Those are the standard annual appropriation ones.
For the record, Cindy and I'm sure the community preservation committee. So the 10% that's 14.
14 is the, yeah. Yep.
Okay, this is a standard article that appears every year. And it is our state mandate to set aside 10% of the revenues that we collect, monies that we collect for each of 3 uses, which is historic preservation, affordable housing, and open space and recreation. It sounds like open space and recreation combined. And then the remainder goes into an undesignated fund. And so that is the state's way to mandate that hopefully we spend at least 10%, village one, whatever. So it's a standard state mandated dollar.
Thank you. My standard question is, can you give me some balances or can you get them to us? All right.
This is our casino. Thank you. So our balances, this is as of February, it doesn't change. This is our available fund, so that really will not change. Our undesignated fund is just over 3 million. Our open space fund stands at 171,000. Our affordable housing fund is at 46,000, and our historical preservation fund is at 775,000.
That's one question with the numbers.
Certainly.
Where is the, if the Mirror Lake thing was to go, is the 46 coming from that 171 or is it coming from the undesignated 3 million?
I think we wrote it to come out of.
Undesignated.
Oh, undesignated, it's one we meant for open space, the rest came out of undesignated.
So it's a quarter of the balance, all right.
No, the undesignated.
Oh, the 3 million, not the 171, okay.
Question about the historic one. I know this has been an ongoing struggle. Because of the limited number of publicly
Right,
fundable historic
right.
structures we have. Is there any process to like? It's half or it's a third almost of our undesignated fund because when we did the Grange, for instance, that was historic and it came out of this particular fund. When we did the church 10 years ago, it came out of this particular. Well, yeah, okay, all right.
We just aren't having any.
Does the ware farm need to be like totally rehabilitated? I'm just talking.
They've been working on it, they did come to us or talk to us about funding to begin with. But it has to be accessible to the public, you know, I mean, that's kind of a hitch on some of the private parcels. And so at that point, they didn't know what they were gonna do with it. The current owners, and I know they've been working on it, I don't know, they're on the process, they talked about opening like notes and agricultural type of school there for a while, but. They ended up pursuing it on their own,
Okay,
because we did have multiple conversations with them and. Expressed enthusiasm, because it's a really great.
how thick is the paint on the tramp house now? Because we paint it like every third year, no, it seems like.
I heard, well, I don't know, but things.
I'm teasing. I'm teasing. I mean,
A lot of times.
we did the Bertha Fails project out of this particular portion of the,
Yes.
right? Yeah, I mean, is the historic commission been, they sit on the. Someone sits on the CPC from the historic.
Yes.
I'm just
I know, it's
concerning that it's just, and I understand why, I was on the CPC before. It's just difficult to, whatever.
And it's, you know, I think if it's a building that the. Isn't necessarily publicly available, because we're going to put a facade, or you can do some work with restrictions on the property, put on the property. Range has some restrictions on the property,
But they're also publicly available,
but they're also publicly available.
as is the church, obviously.
Right.
Okay.
So there's no way to override that.
It's a state law.
What did we do last? We overrode something last, was that,
It
that was
wasn't-
affordable housing, maybe, I forget, anyway.
Yeah, really, if we say in our budget, if we wanted to get 50,000 for affordable housing, we can take most of it out of the existing affordable housing. Bucket, we call it, and take it outside of undesignated, that's about the extent of our flexibility.
Right.
Does anyone else have questions on this one, Lee?
So just one more question.
Sure.
So the Mirror Lake project funds could come from undesignated.
If I think we voted to come out of undesignated.
Okay.
Yes.
I can use for any of the purposes.
So. Cindy, if you guys decided we want to do a grant program for historic, so that someone doing an Eagle project or like the Girl Scouts. Would you have to come to town meeting to get authorization to set up? Could you set up a historic Norfolk grants program, 50,000 a year kind of thing? Could it be an open-ended thing like that?
Know that it can be per year, I think it would have to be reallocated.
Well, each year, yeah,
50,000 bucks not spent,
well, then it just rolls back in.
it goes back in, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's awesome,
Was,
but it would have to go to town meeting, you're right.
the only Eagle project I can remember was the one that John Gage did. Do you remember if he got CPC? He did, you might not remember the project. It's the, okay. It was a while ago, it was at least 10 years ago. So.
Probably after.
No, you were still on CPC. It was after your time in the church, but it was, yeah, you were chair of the CPC. I just can't remember if he got funding. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Anyone else? So Article 15.
Administrative.
That's the administrative. Shut up. Trying to be cool and hip.
Okay, another standard article should just be allowed to 35% our incoming revenues every year to our administrative budget. It does not roll over from year to year. And since we don't know the amount of those revenues, we just kind of literally put a placeholder in, and then once the revenues are available, have them mark the finance director adjust them. But it just allows for us to have enough
This pays for your administrative
our
assistant.
administrative assistant, it will also pay if we wanted to get a, yeah, an appraisal of a property, it can come out of here. We need a new laptop, can come out of here. Any random supplies like that.
Okay,
But the important things are administrative assistant, which is less than 3,000.
I was gonna say, and
Yeah.
it's been the same amount for a long
Yeah.
time. Does she need a raise?
Pardon me,
Does she need a raise?
that's a
Okay,
town mandated raise every year,
All right.
however that works.
thank you. Rob,
So just because I'm a rule follower. So you tell me, we go to town meeting, we vote in 15 grand and then Todd goes and changes it?
Down the road. It's always been done this way, we always over allocate and then.
Gets adjusted down.
It gets adjusted down.
So town meeting's more than.
Yes.
In town meeting, we always say something like up to
Up to.
the amounts, and then it gets adjusted downward for actual.
It's just so that we're not short enough.
This doesn't have up to, it's appropriate to sum up.
All right, so.
As we know, when the legislature appropriates money, the executive's supposed to spend it.
shut up, Rob. What are you doing? Thank you. Anyone have any questions on that one? Article 16 is the Mirror Lake thing. Article 17 is the Campbelltown Forest trail, and I guess it's not just trails, it's parking area, entrance and walking trails. And we did receive a write-up on this,
So they don't want,
which I forwarded to everyone.
Yeah. I thought Caitlin might be on, but she is not. So-
She's got a conflict. We are going to hear from her if we need to at a later date, but
It's proposed by Conservation Commission, and basically it's kind of setting the baseline and the templates and the information that is needed and Campbelltown Forest, which is how much to do future work. So in order to expand trails, improve trails, you need to know where wetlands are. You need to know there's runoff pools, so it's the wetland delineation, the parking lot, if anyone is familiar with it, it's extraordinarily small. So it's looking at a plan to expand the parking lot, how far can it go, does it impact any resources, so that the parking lot expansion part is part. They will come up with a plan for parking lot expansion. The rest of it predominantly is, ideas about the trailheads, but also just all of that basic topo wetland delineation. All of that stuff to provide a base for future plans. So in the data proposal, there is a task form that is not included in this, because that was actually in the construction phase. So when we talked to conservation, the decision was that, come and get all that baseline stuff done, the maps, everything. Go back, conservation, go back, figure out how you want to expand the trails, what parts of the trails you want to improve, boardwalks, all that kind of stuff, make that plan, what you want, then come back with a big construction. So that task force is not included.
if you look at the bottom of the proposal we got, it's 33,000.
We took that out, and then, for the record, we always put in a contingency because, maybe they need more wetland flags and they thought they needed,
This is, the request is for 45 and then rest of the budget adds up to 43,000.
yes, so there's a little bit of contingency on that.
Anyone have any questions on this? And like I said, Caitlin, can be available at a future meeting. We just had a conflict tonight. This would be one of the other things we could talk about.
You know, those parking.
Yeah, it's right off, it's 5 cars or 6 cars. Like the scouts do things in there on occasion, and there's always 3 or 4 cars that have to be
Yeah.
right on
A lot of dog walkers.
Pond Street or whatever that part is. I think.
For people who don't know, it was a scout project that it now goes all the way up to Alice Ave, which is fantastic.
It actually used to go all the way to Alice Ave, and then the neighbors on Alice Ave filled it in, so there was a
Part of history I did not know.
I'm very familiar with that project. I approved it, so. So No more, any questions, Mike?
Yeah, just, I mean, this is, what's part of this? I mean, having,
Conservation,
okay, and they're just because people use it and it
one of the,
sees the,
is in a butter,
okay,
so I think that's where the germ, the
Okay.
idea started.
all right, thank you.
And to make the trail was done very well. You know, they're very moody.
Yeah.
So figure out a way, the best way to kind of stabilize parts of it, so it's like, not so moody. They're also gonna identify like with regards to the parking area, trees over a certain circumference that would be taken down to expand the parking area. So that when they go forward to make a plan, they can get good estimates, for example, for tree removal. We're not talking about going into the forest, we're just talking about expanding. the parking lot.
Hey, everyone.
Yes, Jace.
So Cindy, just so that I'm clear. The fees in the letter from Dave. Total about 76,000.
Yes.
Okay, we're only asking for 45,
Right,
the 40, right, so the 45 is only for assessment and plan,
so tasks 1, 2, and 3.
what you would do, okay. And then hypothetically, this is perfect. You guys will be coming after us to spend more money,
Theoretically, yes.
which could in fact be more than 33, that's in line with.
It probably would be the whole project, like if they wanted to do the trail expansion, it would probably be whatever project they're proposing. Take a look at that.
Because the 33 just covers that parking area stuff.
Right,
Right.
The only actual construction work will be on the parking area. Everything else.
Anything else they want to do in there?
in the forest, yes.
Was there a lot of discussion about this?
There were, yes, they came back, actually, they came first to us last year and we made them go. We figure what they wanted to do and come back with a better plan, they just came with a lump sum. Well, said, please break it down by tasks and get a better definition of what this is going to include.
Thank you.
Thank you. Article 18 is $55,000 to resurface the playground at Freeman Kennedy. Matt, I'm assuming you're here for that as well. Introduce yourself.
Restaurant facility,
Thank you. So 18 and 19 are resurfacing of park playgrounds at the two schools. First one is Freeman Kennedy. If you want to just describe this, we've gotten, again, we got some. Yes, you did, yeah. All I got was a proposal, I didn't get any pictures. Wait a minute, okay. Must have missed that email, sorry about that. So why don't we, yeah, okay. This will cover both 18 and 19, folks.
Actually, this is the HL that.
Okay, so yeah, they're basically the same thing. Go ahead.
So this is the HL day playground. And they have seen separation over the years, tears, holes. I think I got on the next slide, it shows the, yeah, so you have more holes. More separations. We called in a few companies and they're saying that no more repairs can be done to it. It's expanded and contracted so much by now. The surface is like there's actually 3 surfaces at the HL, so it's turf, there's a low cord in place. And then there's this stuff called SMARTE, Smarty system, it's like spaghetti string PVC. And that's where we're having the most problems. So we reached out to a few companies and
They're, at this point, they're saying it's total surface replacement. So we came up with just doing turf, removing all three surfaces and putting turf. We wouldn't have to change any of the subsurface.
I just make a note that for anyone, this is the one in the front of this.
What?
Yes.
This is the one in the front of this.
Okay,
Okay, at the front of the, so these are examples of the turf, obviously. So that's what we would be looking to do there. Again, you wouldn't have to replace the subsurface, once below there now are bags. They have like cover mulching. And putting the turf over that still maintains the fall rating, so we're okay with that. And the cheapest option for us, Perry, is the company that came out and did this smarty system back in 2013. And Recreation Director Pro, myself, and some folks in the facilities department has worked with this company. They work side by side with you, they teach you how to install, how to do repairs. Another company came out and they want, since it's not their system, they want full removal of the subsurface, moving everything.
so they wouldn't just resurface, they want to,
No, they want to remove those bags, put their own subsurface down, making them, I believe, a little over 200,000.
Does that include the play structures too, or just the surface?
This is just surface.
So the play structures would be able to be replaced to,
They stay in place.
Okay.
Usually install around, it's just basically, it's like installing carpet. There's seams, there's cuts.
can I, is, when you say turf, it's not athletic field quality turf, is it?
It's around it is.
So that raises an interesting question.
No, it's not an athletic field. Turf,
Are, wow.
it's not a turf athletic field.
It doesn't have the,
Well, you know where I'm going.
Yes.
And it doesn't have
No,
the
it's-
rubber granules.
no regular.
No crushed tires.
It's basically a carpet.
All right, fine.
And no CPA restrictions against turf field.
Well, I had to ask the question. So it's turf.
You're right.
Yes. No, yeah, and thank you, because it's a. My kids aren't in the school system anymore, but it,
It's been, it's a concern.
okay. And so you've got a quote on, for the Freeman at 55 and the HOD at 83. The Freeman is that little fenced in thing on the way to the fields there, or?
The Freeman is.
Oh, no, it's right across from the.
It's the one right there.
Right, yeah, okay.
That,
Is that other one still there, the one that's sort of on the way to the baseball field?
Oh.
Yes.
And that doesn't have a, that's just got like
Wood chips.
It's like wood chips and it's matting.
All right.
and the pool is gonna be a different surfacing.
Yes.
Oh, so this is the HOD surfacing. Oh, yeah, if you've got examples of this. Hmm.
So this is the Freeman.
Yep.
This is a poured in place surface. So over the years, we've been, as you can see, these are repairs that we do.
Yep.
We've had companies come out, surface is delaminating. So back to like it's talking, it's almost like the rubber granules starting to come about. So we've been constantly buying these expensive, we have to mix up these granules, get bags of green, bags of black, bunch of glue, put them together. Make these patches like this, and then to slow down the delamination, get sealer, binder. And then we do that.
Okay.
These things, these repairs only last about a year. We've had a couple of companies come out again, this is original 2012. Saying full replacement is necessary. Once these things tear a little, you find them everywhere, because the kids just won't leave them. You find them all over the roof, you find them in the toilets. So what we came up with for this, because this, to do all port in place again. You can look at upwards, over 300, over 400 by now. So we spoke to this company, they make mats that we use at other playgrounds throughout town. I believe there's. They're used at the corner, Oregon. It's a product with it, that
Yeah.
playground. I know we use them. In the back of the HLA at that playground, where we have wood chips and the other playground at the FPA. They actually increase fall protection. So there's 4x4 mats, you can go to the next one, please.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
What's the average life of the surface?
Surface?
Yeah, and just an average in general.
Well, originally they told us 12 to 15 years.
Okay.
So we're at that.
Yeah.
Well, what we found out as well is that the port in place doesn't maintain its fall rating throughout the year. It goes freezing. We drive on Sunday, in poles are out there playing. It gets pretty hard.
And I guess so you did a cost analysis of different companies, and I know obviously you're trying to be as cost effective as possible, but are we shooting ourselves in the foot by going with these cheaper options? How long are they gonna last us, and are we gonna run into the same problems that we're having now?
This will lie, so what the plan here is that any more repair that we need to do, we rebind. And then the company we talked to said, a lot of places that have had port in place, fix it, you put this over it, it preserves the port in place that is down there already. These are 5-year warranties. If something happens to these, like I said, they're 4x4 sections. Everything's zip tied together. We remove the mat, replace it. And it will protect the port and police surface. It's under there. So no more costly repairs for that.
Okay.
So these are the examples for whatever.
Is that black getting hot like the surface of the sun in the summer? It doesn't look that.
No, it's rubber. It's like, if you can, picture like a commercial kitchen, you know, see those mats that are in there. So
But I think his point is, does it absorb? I mean, could we go for the lighter color? Rather than the black, which.
Yeah.
Will,
I think they only come in black. I can ask them.
okay, yeah, I'm just curious, because the one at the bottom looks greenish, sort of.
Probably just.
I am colorblind, but so.
I haven't heard anybody bring that up. We've been talking with other places.
Mind asking?
No.
Yeah. And you've got quotes for both of these, or?
Yes,
And the-
yes, this one was, this one was 55,
The,
and we added in some contingency money.
Yeah, we added in contingency, and both contingencies, in part to purchase extra mats now, so that it doesn't come out of the general budget in the future.
Yep.
And also on the HOD, well, you know, it's for contingency, but also thinking that if they take out the existing surface and some of those, that subsurface needs to be supplemented a little bit, that would not be a problem.
it's like a yogi bowl where you can just stick more stuff in it, kind of thing, or bean bag, okay.
Just in case, but like I said, always in contingencies.
Rob, did you have a question?
So well, the article says 55, so it's 55. The contingency is built into that 55, I'm guessing, so the math should be like, you know. Some amount.
Yes, I'm sorry. So the quote I had is 49.
And
So it's about 10%.
so. You're talking about buying new mat, these are not capital items, these are 5 years and we're probably gonna have to replace some of them.
No,
Well, they're 5-year warranted, and if we're buying them now. We're planning on replacing them sooner rather than later because of the cost of storage, you know, you don't buy a good that we're not gonna use for 10 years. You know, so we're buying some now, so it seems to me like we're buying, perishable goods with CPA money, which just seems like this is the school's responsibility. No,
Not.
It's, I mean,
It's like that, you know, it's on the store. Some.
So, Matt,
You just said you're buying
There's
it.
gonna be some extras.
can I back us up to the pictures of the current playground? Where they've had to do repairs in front of the heavy use areas? This means they can replace those mats and not worry about the rest of them, so it is a 5-year warranty at a minimum. That's the 5-year warranty, and everything else is.
Oh,
The big kid sliding down the slide, tearing up the thing, you'll replace the mat at the bottom of the slide.
CPA money.
It's not terrible.
I'll tell you,
It's an expensive.
some of these maps at the other playgrounds, they've been there for 10 years.
Okay.
We're not talking massive quantities.
When we buy non-capital CPC money, I think that's the question. Well, if it's less than 50,000 and it's less than. It's less than 10 years, the lifespan, so can we?
There is maintenance, the ability to do maintenance with CPC money.
There was a specific example on the website about something you couldn't do, which sounded really like this. It was like, you know, upkeep of a slate roof. That you didn't buy it with CPA money in the first place, so you became historic preservation money to keep putting new slate roof on it. And this sounds like that.
Is it any different than painting the tramp house every 5 years?
Right.
And I'm not saying we should paint the tramp house every 5 years.
Say I'm against this, I just
Oh.
keep wondering, you know. Remember Mark Wallman?
Yes.
So when Mark was on the advisory board, he would like make a nickel screen, you know, he was the cheapest man I've ever met. And Mark often said, that
I'm still living in town, I hope he's not.
Mark often said that, look, CPA is the one thing we can actually do things for people with. You know, while we're cutting back on everything and taking out this stuff, this is. People are paying this money anyway, I mean, we might as well do something, like I was gonna come in here and say, we shouldn't only want this amount of money, we're gonna do something, let's do some new equipment. Let's do something nice, maybe there's an adaptive piece of equipment we should think about getting to make.
Yeah,
make the
exactly.
playground more
The
accessible.
amendments that they made opened up some of the maintenance stuff. Because it really was.
Yeah.
Purchase and construction.
Right.
And then
Yeah, I
then
mean,
they
I
opened it up to maintenance, which allows for.
Situation again next year because the playground equipment itself is also on its way, like. Out, so,
I know this is a question that I should have raised, like, you know, back when you're doing hearings on this and stuff, and I didn't pay any attention. So maybe next year, but I, you know, we should do big things with this money if we're gonna do things.
Can we find some historic stuff? Just kidding.
The original, program, playground originally was done with CPA money.
so why isn't it all being replaced and? I mean, I know originally they the schools had requested to replace the entire playground, so why are we just
We
talking
did
about the
In
turf?
the last few years, we did one of the playgrounds, we paid. Yeah, that long ago?
Yeah.
I
like,
wasn't
for-
I wasn't in the CPC then.
The playground is at end of life, so. I mean, I'm not the one making the request, but if the money is available, I don't understand why we're just doing the turf.
I'm not saying burn it, I'm saying let's. Do something nice for the town when we can.
That's true.
Oh.
Somebody does it to us for next year.
Full disclosure, I don't. I'm leaving Norfolk, to the.
Oh, great.
That's the question I didn't ask at last week's meeting, no. There's a savings this year, so.
Sorry to see.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah,
Yes,
indeed.
Yes.
No, they hate us so much, he's just happy. All right, does anyone have any more questions? We can and should raise it with the schools when they're in, you know, because
Yeah.
they initiated some of this, I'm assuming, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they initiated.
They're gonna be here next week. Time to ask that question.
Yeah.
And we have one more CPC question. It's the, Ken, I'll let you take this. It's, there's an extension on the pickleball court. Project, thanks, man.
Thanks.
You don't talk about pickleball?
There's a request for an extension because last year we set basically a year to have it done. initially, everyone thought it was going to be very simple.
Why is it not
It's
simple?
It's not simple because the planning board, Gary Sullivan, he's
I see him.
The planning board determined that it needed a peer review and, something which additional engineering done. So that is still a bit uncertain, exact, in my understanding is what they are requiring is still a little bit uncertain, we don't have a price on it. So, given that when we voted this in, we were not sure what exactly the planning board wanted. So we decided the easiest thing was just to extend the availability of the money so that if what the planning board is requiring is not onerous, and it can be pretty much, paid for by recreation, it can still go forward. If the planning board requirements become quite onerous from a monetary point of view, my anticipation would be that the recreation director would reconsider if she wants to go forward with the pickleball courts, she wants to ask for more money for the pickleball courts, or she wants to abandon.
Where, yes, where are these pickleball?
This wasn't here. This one.
Open up a can of worms.
They are, you know where the beach volleyball court is at Pond Street?
Yes,
That would be replaced.
okay.
It was a very long.
Top Gun will be really invigorated. Football. You spend money to put that in. Stand by that.
So this just extends the.
It's just extending the existing to allow things to play out and figure out what the next step is. Obviously, if they can afford to do it within this budget, they're gonna have to reconsider whether they're gonna come back, abandon it, absorb some of the costs and recreation. I do not know that answer.
He asked Gary.
And Gary, are you able and willing to address this?
I can give you some information. Yeah. So, speaking on behalf of the planning board, Gary Sullivan, 6 Lane. It was deemed by the planning board that this requires full site plan review due to drainage concerns and visibility of kind of site changes or sight line changes for the area, right? Because it's right up against where the, it's not a turnaround, but the lot kind of does that little half moon thing where the ice cream truck likes to sit. So we were a little concerned about drainage and traffic pattern changes and how things would look. If there's a 8-foot fence, what's that line of sight going to look like from the parking lot looking back towards the tennis courts?
All right.
The other part of this is, which I think CPC is okay with. This is also weird for me because I am the CPC liaison for planning board, so I sit through these meetings. Is public hearing? Just there's a lot of apparent noise generated from pickleball courts. So we want to make sure that abutters have ability to voice their opinions on this.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Gary?
It's a long arduous process to even come up with this particular location because everything else was problematic from
Yeah.
a noise perspective.
I can understand.
More noise than kids playing soccer over there. I mean,
That's a good
You
piece.
should go on that board and see.
Anyway,
there's always sections.
no more questions for Gary? Thank you.
Thank you. So
Any questions for Cindy on this?
I'll go down out.
Or do we need to talk? Ian?
So is this going to be an actual warrant article or?
Yeah, that's it, because they have to, the money is supposed to run out in 3 months, so.
Yep. No, the money runs out 15 months.
Okay, 15 months. So in other words, they haven't even started construction. yet. Yes.
Application is out the end of June.
What,
We're running from last year.
is there a price for the site engineering, the peer review?
Oh, it says 2026.
It's 2026.
That's the extension goes to 2026.
Since it goes to 27, December 31st, 27.
27.
Did you double check this?
Perhaps I mistyped. I will check.
Yeah, please. That would be important. So you think you think your money runs out in 3 months and you want to extend it for another 15 months?
Completion was June 30, 2025. It's in the explanation. Sorry.
So the article that we have says 2026
Yeah,
and extends it to December 31st, 2027. So
it's Scrivener's error.
Yeah, I don't know why.
You know, Ken, it's actually in your interest to extend this, because if you extend it enough, A, there might be personnel changes, and B, it becomes less, you know, it's less of a fact.
That much sooner, we don't have to replace it again with the new.
anyways,
In your details, it says 2026.
in the warrant, in the thing that's going to the town.
Yeah.
Dates are, this is what we do. Yeah, well, then they, yeah, okay, we're, Justin's on still.
Can I ask,
I'll double check.
Sorry, I'm not.
No,
Yeah.
for clarification, is it, do you think it's 25 to 26 or 25 to 27?
27 is what I
Okay,
thought.
all
This
right.
last,
So the 27 is correct, but the 20.
Okay, that's
Correct.
right. And just, can I just, for context, for new members, if we did vote at town meeting to approve this last year, this is just to change the date.
Right.
So all of sent in here, but
As well as that.
yes, okay. But I'm just saying it was, that's what where the inside jokes are and so forth.
Question about this, so, is there a concern on how much the site engineering and the peer review, that's gonna be about $7,500 at least, is gonna cost, and then is there? I don't know how much contingency is it for escalation, because this is now really a project that the price was quoted last year that you're looking to do. It's gonna be 2 years beyond that price, so God knows that's probably, you know, the way public construction is now, that's how the 10-15%, so. Not that I want to get any more into this, not what's gonna solve the whole reason, it's probably $25,000 like it sits right now. Revisit this one more time, I don't have the. Articles for that.
we have a possible estimate as to what the cost of the peer review or the additional engineering is. That's why we decided just to extend the availability of this money. To
And-
find out what's coming down the line.
Cindy, you also said that rec would find some of their own funds to cover some of these.
It is a possibility if that they could absorb some of the funding.
Can you spend like if, let's say 7,500 for the peer review, can you do that without town meeting out of CPC funds or
No,
CPC funds happen?
Nothing for CPC comes out.
Revolving, and they do it.
That's, I think, what Cindy's saying.
That's what she's talking about.
number, it's not been discussed. And Proto gave their opinion that if it was something that they could reasonably absorb. With information, they would do so.
If you would like, I can ask Andy answer some questions for us.
It's just obviously the project's gotten.
Exactly.
Yeah, we know.
And so,
Okay,
and if we have to wait till another fall, then it's just
yeah,
gonna,
right, let's not push it another year.
we're just adding to the price of this thing.
Okay,
And I
I
guess,
will try to track that down for us.
yeah, and if I made a mistake and it wasn't expiring in 25, it was expiring in 26, we would still want to extend it to 27.
27, yeah, right, it's, okay.
Regardless.
We gotta make sure the article is written correctly. though,
Yes,
Because I don't want to have to amend something on the floor again.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Alrighty.
That
Thank you, Cindy.
concludes our discussions on the warrant articles for tonight. Next week, we have the schools. They both confirmed they will be here, and the following week, we have. Planning is in 3 weeks. 2 weeks. So yes, all right, planning is in 2 weeks. Yes, Rob.
We haven't gotten any new schools yet, right, for presentations?
They're not, they're literally, our schools are just wrapping up their approval process, so they don't have any.
Right, but. Yeah, it would be great not to get something, you know, Tuesday night.
Thank you, guys.
For the Wednesday.
I will ask them both before what they can. Right. We have one more item of business. Melissa is not here. I did review the minutes that she forwarded. I don't know if anyone else did. I had no changes.
I feel like I can change this.
Oh, you do? Okay.
So. Under budget presentation, paragraph 7.
Yeah.
Last line,
Mm-hmm.
talks about the initial budget gap was 1.8 million. And then the line after that says that Justin is hoping to reduce it to 1.13 million, it doesn't make sense.
We,
Track on, right, something to track.
Yeah, he wanted it one. That's the 400,000 for Tri-County and brought it up to the gap fees, 1.819.
where are we?
No.
Yep.
Right.
Oops. 1.8 gap, we expect,
What do you get?
so we're 1.4 plus the 400,000 for tribe.
Right, but it still doesn't make sense.
1.13, he's gonna reduce the gap from 1.8 to 1.13.
Okay, so then look at paragraph 11. Next one. Rob said something about closing it to 1.1. Rob asked to clarify if the 1.1 million deficit Justin expects includes the 405.
Does not, so in other words,
Which it
the
does.
two numbers are wrong.
Yes.
Okay,
So I'm not.
all right, well, we're there. We're right. Cause reason to have a computer.
Could we hold off the vote?
We could hold off the vote.
Yeah.
All right, we'll hold off the vote till next week. All right, thank you, Joe.
And I did reply to Melissa and
Okay.
gave her that.
All right, cool. Thank you. So we are not in motion minutes. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.